My name is Christian Ashley, a seminary student and servant of God, and you are listening to the Let Nothing Move You podcast, a proud Anazal Ministries podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of the Let Nothing Move You podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, as we continue on through the book of Exodus. We've had a couple of guest stars these past couple of episodes, but for the next two, you'll be with me. But then after those, we'll be back with Karairo, the Foreign Saints podcast, doing Exodus 28 and 29, talking about the priestly garments. But until then, you're stuck with me. So let's just get into this bad boy. All right, we'll be in Exodus 23 and 24 today, starting verses 1 through 3. You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit, siding with the many so as to pervert justice. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. Now, a couple episodes ago, Pastor Will and I did the 10 Commandments, and in them, we see God commanding the people to not bear false witness against their neighbors. Here in these verses, we see further clarification on what this means and what he hates about it. Perverting justice in any way is antithetical to a righteous walk with God, as he is a God of truth and justice. The same is true of anyone who claims his name and then uses the justice system for their own purposes. Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, I don't care. When they do that, they are perverting God's justice, especially even more so when they claim they're doing what they're doing in the name of God. That has nothing to do with what he desires. He desires truth. He desires perfection. He desires perfect justice. And the Israelites right here are first warned to not spread false reports. Lying in this way means that you are removing the truth from your words and perverting the one who hears your words' perception of reality. Just a fancy way of saying, if you lie to someone, they don't have the truth because you didn't tell them the truth. We desire to trust what other people say because that is how we are designed. That is how we think the system should work. We live out in faith every day that what we hear from other people, what we hear on the news is based on truth. So for someone to pervert this in any way ruins our trust in one another. This also requires that we not spread lies and falsehoods created by someone else. Fact check yourselves. Get the right data. But in the example provided in this first verse, a wicked man seeks to honor and protect himself by lying about reality and furthering this by encouraging you to join them. I could name names right now politically. That's not the point of what I'm trying to say. If you're wise, you'll know who they are and you'll know to avoid them and their rhetoric. But that's exactly what God is warning against here in the law. To actively participate in spreading falsehoods and lies makes us as equally guilty as the people who are committing these sins that they have to lie about in order, to not look as bad, to not get prosecuted, to not get financially hurt by decisions that they make. And failing to act as well leaves one fully culpable in preventing the spread of this lie. Well, I never joined their cause, and yeah, but you didn't do anything about it. You didn't help the people in need. You didn't speak truth. So in some ways, you're not helping the problem. You're in fact making it worse. And God can't stand that. We are here to speak truth in the world. No matter the cost, no matter how much it hurts us, no matter how many times we are told we're fools, truth is truth, and it doesn't care about my position in life. It doesn't care about what I might lose. It needs to be defended. It needs to be spoken into the world, regardless of the consequences. And we also see here, so too are we supposed to deny our tendencies to simply follow the majority when it comes to our beliefs and our decision making. I'm a very conservative guy until I start talking with conservatives. And then I end up a little more liberal. I talk to the liberals and they think I'm the most conservative man who's ever existed. I don't really know who represents me. I haven't really figured that out. But I am like this and I am rejected by both sides because I don't fully submit to what they think should be what happens. I'm definitely nowhere close to being a Democrat. But at this point in time, I'm nowhere near being a Republican either. Neither one of those are inherently evil things. These political parties are supposed to be for good, to bring good into the world. But when you dogmatically follow something, when you dogmatically follow a person or a political party or a church or a pastor, rather than actually committing yourself to truth, you are harming yourself and others. Simply because a majority says something is true does not in and of itself make it true. And you know this because you're logical people. When CNN is saying one thing and Fox News is saying another thing and MSNBC says another thing and BBC says something and Reddit says something else, you know inherently they can't all be true because that's not how truth works. We don't live in a world where truth is subjective, no matter how much people would like to believe that. So we need to think about it. Just because something is popular doesn't make it truthful. Truth will always be true, regardless of the numbers involved in sharing and trusting in it. If one person is crying out against evil, hey, welcome to the prophets. That's pretty much what was happening. They were in the right, but the majority was saying something else. And so is that the case not only in our lives, but how we enact the law. And this continues on in the idea that we are never to join in the multitude to be part of a lawsuit where the intention would be to lie for the sake of gain. At this same time, we are also warned to not simply side with the poor because they are poor in a lawsuit. A rich man and poor man should both have equal justice offered to them in the court system. The whole point of God's perfect law is that no one is better than the other. We are all sinners. We are all worthless compared to him. But he sees things objectively. He sees things lovingly. So he expects the same out of people who are representing him by bringing the law to others. So we need to think about that as we wonder, well, what did the Supreme Court say this time? Or what ruling did they make? Or what did the president say? Just think, why am I outraged? Why do I think that what I believe in is truth? Is it because God said so? Is it because my pastor said so? Is it because Christian Ashley said so? Is it because this political party said so? What is truth? Truth is not what I want things to be. Truth is reality. That can only come from seeing things from godly perspective as the ultimate author of truth. Now we'll go from there to verses 4 through 5. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying down under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving him with it. You shall rescue it with him. These simple laws are astounding and revolutionary. These laws mandated helping and loving your enemies by acting in their best interests, even when no one else was around to see you do it. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to the golden rule yet, which will be in Leviticus. Without witnesses, how were the people to be prosecuted for this? Well, they wouldn't be. But because God, sovereign over all things, all knowing, all powerful, looking over everything, sees an Israelite not doing what they're doing, what's supposed to be doing, sees you and I not doing what we're supposed to be doing, it can be part of the law. It can be a mandate. Look after them. Do your job. Love your enemies. Because God knew their hearts and witnessed their actions, making them culpable even if no one else was around to see. You can't hide something from God. And that's why he makes part of the law something that, how are you supposed to prove this in a court of law if there's no witnesses? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if no one else sees, God sees. Not in a, oh, well, he's just got his clipboard nearby him, says checking things off. Was well, they just told a lie today, or well, they lusted today. Oh, those hellions, those idiots. Like, no, because he wants you to be accountable. He wants you to live a truthful, holy life, so that you benefit and others benefit. I will go from there to verses 6 through 9. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in his lawsuit. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not acquit the wicked. And you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of those who are in the right. You shall not oppress a sojourner. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Just as it was unjust to unfavorably help a poor man in his lawsuit, so too was it unjust to act against them in that same lawsuit in favor of the rich man. Just furthering the themes from earlier in this chapter. Neither is more important than the other, and perfect justice sees no wealth, but once again the truth as the ultimate authority. A poor man and a rich man both bring a lawsuit against one another. Well, our hearts would go, well, the rich man, he probably got that stuff, in a shady fashion. Or surely this poor man deserves to have the money. Well, may not be the case. And even if the rich man got something in a shady manner, doesn't mean we can just sue him for that. I don't like it. I don't want that to be reality, but that's not the point. If we can prove there was some insider trading or something, yes, get that in there. Get that into the court system. Just in the same way that if a poor man is oppressing a rich man and a rich man is oppressing a poor man, both of those should be treated equally in the court of law. And we also see here the judges of the land were commanded to not send out judgments that killed the innocent and righteous, specifically through not accepting bribes that would lead to these unrighteous judgments. To take a bribe was to destroy the perfect justice demanded by God to safeguard his people. Judges, they were all called to be that perfect person who does no sin. But if there's other people out there, there's a group of people out there who should be scrutinized, who should be doing their job effectively, it's a judge. Because that's their job. They are acting as an earthly representative of God to bring the law to others. A good judge does not uphold an evil law. A good judge does not accept a bribe. That is what God is speaking about here. He is talking about his character. God cannot do these things. He cannot accept a bribe. He cannot be evil in his judgments. He is perfect and holy and righteous. And he expects the same out of an imperfect people. So he warns them in advance. Guys, don't take bribes. Look after people, regardless of their financial status. And when you look forward to the prophets, these very same things are what the prophets are decrying in the nation of Israel and Judah, because the judges aren't doing their job. The rich aren't doing their job. The poor aren't doing their job. No one is doing their job. Everyone is making it more miserable for everyone else. And as a result, the nation is crumbling. So that's why God established these laws. Once again, so that they would have no excuse for when they do screw up, and they are, but also because it's supposed to be a representative of what you're supposed to do. And in the final part of that, we also see protections offered to sojourners in the land, who are to be treated as well as any Israelite, who are supposed to be carrying on the legacy of their forefathers, who were once sojourners in a foreign land without rights. So, of course, they, out of all people in the world, should be friendly in a culture that is supposed to be doing this anyway, but God makes it mandated by law, the hospitality rights, to look after the person in need from another nation, for the traveler from a different city who needs help, even within your own borders. To not look after them was to say, well, I mean, God looked after us, but I don't have to do it for anyone else. I don't have to act like him. And of course that upsets God, because they're not being like him, who looked after people who had no one in their corner, no one to love them, no one to make sure they were being treated fairly. So for the Israelites to act like this was to reject the love that God had offered them. We'll go from there to verses 10 through 13. For 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield. But the seventh year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat. You shall do likewise with your vineyard and with your olive orchard. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the son of your servant woman and the alien may be refreshed. God's plan for the land was for there to be 6 years of work and a single year of resting the fields, which allowed for the people to rest and the land to recuperate so that it wouldn't be polluted by their efforts. This was also supposed to be part of their week, where they worked 6 days and rested on the seventh in accordance to the Sabbath commandment. Continually working for the people and the land was evil, as God commanded them to rest for their physical and spiritual welfare. We are not made to work every single day. We are designed to work, don't get me wrong. That's one of the earliest things we're told to do in Scripture. But we're not meant to do it every single waking moment of the day, and not every single day. Now, in our present time in America and across the world, we are blessed with 2 days of rest, one of which is supposed to be our day of communal worship. And we're going to see later on in the prophets, I keep bringing them up because the law is that's what they're going to be saying. You're not following the law. Here's what they're talking about. The prophets are going to be speaking way later on about how the people are not resting and worshiping him as he commands here. Can you imagine being told, hey, by the law, I command you not to work and rest, and then you go out and do it anyways? You don't go to Sabbath. You don't go to your synagogue. You don't listen to your priest. You decide to do work instead. Could you imagine a life like that? What happened to the Israelites, and it happens to us too. And if we're not careful, we're going to bring the same ruin upon ourselves that they did. And it is for this reason that God specifically speaks to the people with a directive to pay attention to what he has to say. Did I do verse 13? I did not do verse 13, I don't think. Oh, well, sorry. I'm doing this very early in the morning, so I am not at my A game. 13. Pay attention to all that I have said to you, and make no mention of the names of other gods, nor let it be heard on your lips. So, what I was saying earlier, it is for this reason that God specifically speaks to the people with a directive to pay attention to what he has to say, because if they don't, they will have no one to blame but themselves. He also forbids seeking out the words of foreign gods because they will not love them like he does. Only God can show love to the Israelite people. They are his people. Baal can't do this. Tiamat can't do this. Zeus can't do this. No other foreign god can do this. Only God can love his people. Only God can show them the way of righteousness and how to love, how to give justice. And we'll go from there to verses 14 through 17. 3 times in a year you shall keep a feast to me. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. As I commanded you, you shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days at the appointed time in the month of Abib. For in it you came out of Egypt. None shall appear before me empty-handed. You shall keep the feast of harvest, of the first fruits of your labor, of what you sow in the field. You shall keep the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in from the fruit of labor. In from the field the fruit of your labor. 3 times in a year shall all your males appear before the Lord God. Now, we have previously seen the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so we'll focus on the 2 new ones here a little bit because they get expounded on further in Leviticus. Both of them harvest and ingathering. Like I said, you're going to see them more in Leviticus, but they also receive names like Pentecost and the Feast of Booths. They all serve the purpose of celebration, promoting community, and giving the people time to rest and relax. God ordained these holidays because he knows we need to have reasons to rest and celebrate the good things that happen to us. God ordained rest because rest is good. Work is also good. God mandated work. He also mandated rest. To not do either one is to reject what he has in store for us, what he desires from us. And also here we see that 3 times in a year During these festivals, they'll prevent the males before God. As their role as leaders of the community, they are supposed to renew their vows. They're supposed to have the law read to them. They're supposed to do their job of making sure they and their families are following God. You may notice throughout Israeli history, this does not happen that much. I will go from there to verses 18 through 19. You shall not offer the you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, or let the fat of my feast remain until the morning. The best of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. The leavened bread, ceremonially, was meant to represent the sins of the people. So to offer the blood that was meant to atone for these sins alongside it was to miss the point of the offering. So too was the offering to be done neatly and quickly. So by leaving the offering overnight, it showed that the priests were slacking off and not caring about the people under their care. For them to not do what they're told misses the point of why they're doing it. If I tell you, hey, I would like my car delivered to me after I loan it to you, and you return it to me, and there are 2 flat tires, you haven't completed the task. You've delivered my car back to me, but the inherent part there is hey, I also intend for that car to come back the way I found it. Follow through with these directives. But they're not going to. Now, the last part there, you may go, what does that have to do with anything? Boiling a goat in its mother's milk? Well, there are several interpretations here. The primary one is that it seems to be related to a Canaanite ritual wherein, the sacrifice of the goat in its mother's milk was meant as a sign of the offering, being, symbolically promoting fertility by asking the gods to bring them a bountiful harvest and to promote increased childbirth. So another interpretation would be that the symbolism involved was a reversal of the natural order and that a young goat should have drank his mother's milk in order to promote life. So if you boil it in its mother's milk, this is antithetical to how nature and life are supposed to go. Now, what God was not saying here is that one cannot eat meat with cheese or other dairy products, as has been interpreted legalistically by many modern rabbis and people who would say that they're Christian, but also follow the law instead of being freed from that law in a very false manner. That's not what God is saying here. Guess what? Your cheeseburgers, you're supposed to eat cheeseburgers. They're good. They're probably not good for you, as many as I eat, but there's nothing inherently wrong with them. It's talking about something else. And we'll go from there to verses 20 through 33. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you carefully obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I blot them out, you shall not bow down to their gods nor serve them, nor do as they do, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars in pieces. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from among you. None shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my terror before you and will throw into confusion all the people against whom you shall come, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply against you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and possessed the land. And I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. Now we see God's angel here has been interpreted multiple ways. Some see this as an early appearance of Jesus and equate the angel with the same one who will meet with Joshua before the Battle of Jericho. The commander of the Lord's army is what he's called there. People point to this specifically because God equates rebelling against the angel as if they were rebelling against him. And he says that God's name is in him, this angel. So, Trinity, Jesus part of the Trinity, Jesus being this angel. People don't really know who Jesus is yet. That's how he's described to them. I can see the logic there. I kind of follow that. Now, others take this angel to simply be a higher ranking angel who God, shows favor to and allowing him to work alongside Israel in the conquest of the land. Regardless of the proper interpretation, God's command was to follow the angel, which the people would ultimately fail to do. And because of the conditional nature of this directive, it meant that God wouldn't help them completely take over the land. He wouldn't prevent them from not having children because they didn't listen. He wouldn't give them the borders he promised them because they didn't listen. God also commands the people not to worship the gods of the land, despite knowing that this is precisely what they will end up doing multiple times over throughout their history. Once more, this is a command given to warn the people about the consequences of their actions and making sure to never give them an out for not being warned in advance for what would happen to them if they failed to follow him fully. Self-evident. Said it multiple times. So move on. God also says he will not instantly cause the Canaanites to lose, even if the people were following him fully with their hearts. This was not meant to punish them, but to show that he works on his time in accordance to his will, and they needed to follow him regardless of how long it took for his will to be done. Because the people didn't follow God, they made the process last even longer. Had they stayed faithful, the eventual conquest of the land would have taken time, but not nearly as long as it took for them until the day that David became king and subjugated their Canaanite enemies. And depending on how you date the Exodus, this would have been 450 years or about 250 years after they first came into the promised land. God's plan here, if they had actually followed through, was for him to take his time, which allowed the Israelites to bolster their defenses of the land they have already conquered, to plant their crops, and have children in order to fill the land that was promised to them. If they just took it swiftly, they wouldn't have learned their lesson that the only reason this happened was because of God. They would have said, well, we did this on our own might. And guess what? Even though it didn't happen that way anyways, they still thought that. And yet God was being merciful here by offering this option that they didn't follow. And from there, we'll go to 24, verses 1 through 8. Then he said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him. Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. One of the greatest bits of unintentional comedy in the Bible. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the people of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. And Moses took the blood and threw it on the people and said, behold the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. Sorry, I couldn't help a corpse there. And you know why. Well, we'll get there in a second. Moses returns to the people to deliver the laws that he's been given here and the commands given here by God, making sure to have the elders and the priests near him, as it will be their responsibility to make sure these new directives are explained and followed faithfully. But Moses alone out of all these men was able to experience God, not because, he was more pious and spiritual than the others, but because God had personally selected him for this job. Moses was immensely unqualified for this position, and so was everyone else. And yet God chose him specifically. Moses never earned his relationship with God. Yet God still made him his representative to the people. And God does that to every leader in the church. These men, they're just men. They screw up. They lie. They cheat. They commit sinful acts. And yet God looks at them and says, "You're mine. Repent and teach. Lead the people." And if Moses can do it, anyone can, as directed by God. Any man can. Now, we also see here Moses wrote down the words we are currently reading and hearing, having been directed by God in order to do so. Now, at this stage in history, chances are most Israelites were not literate, especially since they grew up as slaves, sons of slaves, especially foreign slaves, who wouldn't have had the best resources to do so and might have just been able to just speak their language and that be it. But the fact of the matter is that God was making them his people and gifting them with the time they would need to start becoming a learned culture, able to pass on their knowledge both orally, which would have been the preferred method as they were still in the process of learning to read and write, outside of the select few who were actually capable of doing so, but also through the written word. Throughout history, we see the most successful cultures are able to pass on their history, laws, and creative works when they are literate. Other cultures may have the ability to orally tell their histories, but when the language dies or the people get assimilated into other cultures and tribes, these are lost to us. I'm not saying that a culture that doesn't have the ability to write down their words are just a bunch of yokels who are idiots and we shouldn't be listening to them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying far more successful cultures are those who are able to pass that information on in multiple formats. The Israelites primarily were oral in how they told their histories and told about the law and everything, but they were also beginning to be literate. And that's why we have what we have, because they kept these records, because they wrote these things down as God commanded. Now, God, knowing his people would suffer many great tragedies that would threaten their ability to learn from their past and to follow his commands wisely, has Moses write down his words to preserve them to the point where we have them today. And faithful priests and scribes continued the process from Moses to where we have scripture. There was always a remnant left behind who was doing the good work while everyone else was saying, no, this is worthless. Now, at the end here, we're not entirely sure what the blood being sprinkled on the altar and the people means. Most scholars agree that it probably has something to do with the blood, linking them together for as long as the sacrificial system was in place. The blood was meant to cover their sins, and this could not be done without the altar, just as people could not live without the sacrifices made to cover them from God's righteous wrath. That seems to be what's going on here. I haven't really seen any good interpretations of what else this could be, so I'm going with that one as my main answer. And we'll finish off today with verses 9 through 18. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. There was under his feet as it were a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven for clearness. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, that I may give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instruction." So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we return to you, and behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has the dispute, let him go to them." Then Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. On the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. At the very start here, we see something wondrous. The elders, priests, and Moses can see God, but they do not experience the fullness of his holy presence. It's heavily implied that they don't even look above his feet. Yet God chose to appear to them anyways, even if he wouldn't reveal his fullness to them, which was an immensely rare opportunity for the people assembled there. Now, some scholars believe that they merely saw as high as God's footstool. Now, whether that's a figurative or actually God has a footstool, that's a matter of debate. And that the sapphire colors either referred to the sea of glass before the throne of God that we see in Revelation 4:6, or that this might be the sapphire throne of God as described in Ezekiel 126. Don't know. Either way, the people got the rare glimpse of God and his heavenly realm that he rules from, which are truly gifts to be treasured by those who have witnessed such things. I have never seen heaven. I'm probably never going to see anything until it's my time. I'm spiritually jealous of this, if that's a thing, if I'm not guilty of a sin in saying that, because they got to witness something I can't quantify because I haven't experienced it yet. But throughout all this, regardless, God blesses the men more by allowing them to eat and drink in his company. Can you imagine being gifted with that? I mean, it's going to be eternity. Going to have that to look forward to, but they got to do it before it was their time. That is amazing. And God furthers this by offering Moses and Joshua the opportunity to be closer to him as he directly offers the tablets of stone that hold the law on them. But they were not granted immediate access to God. God's holiness was something to be revered. And to make Moses appreciate this, God made him wait 7 days before bringing him into his presence. Then God compounded this by making the people wait an additional 33 days before Moses came back to them, having Moses remain with him 40 days. And with that, we're done for today. Thank you guys for what you do. I really appreciate it. Please, if you get a chance, leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. If you're interested in my own fiction writing, you can find my works at starvingwritersguild.com or on Amazon by searching for the name MC Ashley. If you're all interested in some further solid studies into the Bible and its teachings, then check out the other members of the NSL Ministries Podcasting Network. You can contact me at letnothingmoviepodcast@gmail.com. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Joshua Knoll for the editing that he does and for the music he adds to the podcast. And with all that in mind, God bless you in accordance to his will and not mine, and allow me one more time to remind you, let nothing move you.
Hey guys, are you interested in podcasting but don't know where to go? Well, check out Zencaster.com and go ahead and make an account there and use special promo code Let Nothing Move You, all caps. That way you can get 30% off of your next deal to go ahead and set things up so you can figure out how to edit stuff using Zencaster.com to host your stuff, to get things done there. So check out Zencaster.com, use special promo code Let Nothing Move You. All right, see ya.